Hi, I'm Greg Schweitzer, the founder and chief catalyst at Catalyst Transformation Institute. And have you ever had a situation where someone came to the wrong conclusion about you? Or someone came to the wrong conclusion about something you did or about something that happened? I'm sure you have, right? As a matter of fact, have you ever come to the wrong conclusion about somebody else? Or about something they did? Or about a particular situation, even though that you were absolutely sure that you were absolutely right about the conclusion? I know that I have too. But how does this happen? This is something really important I want to talk with you about today. And I'm labeled this video, Test Your Assumptions. Because really what we're talking about here is the difference between coming to a conclusion or to a preclusion. What's the difference? So if you look at the dictionary definition of a conclusion is a decision that is reached by reasoning, okay? But if you look at a preclusion means the barring of evidence. So what's the difference there? The difference is when somebody comes to a conclusion about something, they have looked at the evidence, they've seen the story, they've seen what really has happened, they've checked it all out, and by reason, right? By their reasoning, they've come to a conclusion or a decision about what something means. A preclusion, on the other hand, is that somebody has raced to some sort of what they thought was a conclusion, but they left out some of the evidence. They left out some of the details of a situation. All right, you get this, you understand this, you've experienced this probably multiple times in your life, and it happens on a regular basis. How is this a problem? Well, this is a problem because when people, ourselves included, come to decisions that are a little bit too rash, without reasoning, or we come to a preclusion and we leave out some details, it can do things like damage a relationship. It can do things like cost us money because we made a very expensive mistake, and the list could go on. But what I want to do is I want to share with you why this happens and how it happens so that you can prevent it, so that you can make better decisions, so that you can have situations where things go your way more often. Because who doesn't want things to go their way, right? So I want to chat with you about this for just a minute here. I use a phrase with people when I'm coaching with them and when I'm working with them and when I'm teaching classes and seminars. And that phrase is know thyself to direct thyself. And that's what I want to do today is I want to teach you how to know thyself so that you can direct yourself. I want to teach you how to know how you as a human person, on average, we as human people, process information, how we make meaning from the things that happen in life so that we can do better at using reason to come to a great conclusion, an accurate one, instead of coming to a preclusion where we've left out information and make ourselves look like fools, right? Okay, so here's how this works. What initially happens is some sort of event or experience shows up, and you can see what I'm doing right here. And we have a perception of what happens. I want you to imagine this. You're standing on a street corner, it's a fairly busy street corner, and all of a sudden, crash, you hear these two cars crash together, right? And you see what happens there. Now, you're standing on one corner, and somebody else is standing on a different corner, and when the police officers show up to do the investigation and find out what happens, and they get testimonies from people, why is it that people's testimonies are a little bit different? Sometimes a lot different, okay? You've probably experienced that to some extent, okay? So what happens is that you have given your testimony, you say, well, this is what happened, and this person in the blue car, actually turned too soon and ran into the red car. And then the other person on the other side of the corner says, well, the way it looked like was that the red car had the right of way, but the blue car turned into them, and maybe it's a little different story, okay? Doesn't matter what the details are, but the bottom line is we have a perception of what happens when we have some of experience, okay? Now here's what's happening in your brain. We have this perception. This is what I see happening. And then what happens is we have what we call an association. And this is really interesting because your brain already has an idea of how the world works. You've been around this planet, you've been on Earth as a human being for probably several decades at least, right? And you've kind of got an idea of how things work. And when we have an idea mentally of how things work, and then something new happens, we have a new perception, our brain has to do this integration process where it says, hey, this is how I know the world to work, and this is the new thing that's happening. How do these things fit? And we call that association. We ask ourselves, subconsciously, by the way, this only happens on a subconscious level, When we have this perception, we ask ourselves, have I ever seen anything like this before? So that I can associate it to something. Once we've had the perception and then we ask that subconscious question, have I ever seen anything like this before? We end up with what we call an interpretation. This is where we decide what something means. If I were to be driving down the road and all of a sudden I got a flat tire, okay, my perception is, my car's kind of lopsided, it's not working right. Ooh, association, I've had a flat tire before, or my parents told me about a flat tire, or whatever it might be. And I go, ooh, that means I have a flat tire. But my interpretation of that could be, God, you see, this stuff happens to me all the time. I'm just the most unlucky guy on the planet. Or my interpretation could be, oh, this is a flat tire. Dealt with this before, changed the tire. I'm just going to get out and handle that and get beyond my way. Okay, so this is where we get to interpretation. This is where things get really interesting. And this is where we get into the difference between the conclusion and the preclusion. Because what happens next is that we form a belief. Once we have seen the situation, we said, how have I ever seen this before with an association? We create an interpretation which gives it meaning, and then we form a belief on that. And my friend, we always behave or act on what we believe. And this is what's very interesting, so that when that person who came to that conclusion, more accurately a preclusion, that was inaccurate about you or something you did or about a situation, it's simply because they formed a belief about what had happened before they actually did the homework of finding out the evidence. So, because we've labeled this test your assumptions, what I want to encourage you to do is that because this process happens on a subconscious level, and it happens lightning fast because that's how amazing you've been made. You've been made that your brain works lightning fast, and that's been so helpful for us in so many different ways in our life. This is just a process of this is just the way to slow the process down. And when you slow the process down, then you can have more control, more influence over this process. Test that assumption. Have a perception, association, and then when you get to the interpretation phase, right in here you can start injecting, let's take a look, what's all the evidence? What's really going on here? Okay. So I want to share a phrase with you real quickly that was shared with me, this has been several years ago now, and it really rang true with me, and it's going to take all that we've talked about right now up to this moment, and it's going to encapsulate it and put a cap on it for us, okay? Put a kind of some conclusion on it, if you will, okay? The phrase is, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. And you see, when we come to an interpretation, i.e., when we come to an interpretation, which then forms a belief, and then we act on that, and if we act too soon, that's what we call the malpractice part, right? So we come up with a prescription before diagnosing what really actually happened back here, and then we don't have a diagnosis. And so prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So to keep yourself from making poor conclusions about other people, about other situations, about your life, about your business, about your career, about everything that's going on in your life, and to make more accurate ones, which means you get to make more accurate decisions. And when you make more accurate decisions, then you have greater influence over the trajectory of your life and your career. And my friend, that's what I want for you. The whole reason that I do what I do, and the whole reason that I talk about being a catalyst, is because I want to help you put yourself back in power around the results in your life. You see, I had a conversation last night with a client of mine, and one of the things we talked about was that this person was abdicating his sovereign authority over his life by allowing circumstances or interpretations of circumstances to make him feel a particular way or to behave a particular way. He since learned how to do that a little bit better, and now you have too, just by understanding this process. So be purposeful with how you make meaning in your life, okay? Stop doing malpractice. Allow yourself to test your assumptions, make great decisions, and when you make great decisions, you're gonna have greater results in your life, right? Good. Listen, you know I love you, so be great. It's what you're made for. We'll talk later.